What would you do if, on the day you were supposed to celebrate your achievements, your father publicly disowned you and revealed a family secret that could shatter everything you thought you knew about your identity? As I stood on the stage, the bright lights shining down on me, I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. Graduation day had finally arrived, a culmination of years of hard work and determination. My heart raced as I listened to the principal's speech, filled with promises of new beginnings and endless possibilities. I could almost taste the freedom that awaited me, the chance to carve my own path. But just as I was about to step forward to receive my diploma, everything changed. "Zoe Richardson." The principal called my name, and I took a deep breath, ready to walk across the stage. But before I could take a single step, my adoptive father, Ethan, stood up in the fourth row, his voice cutting through the air like a knife. "You're not my real daughter anyway." The words echoed in the gymnasium, and a collective gasp rippled through the crowd. I froze, my heart sinking as I processed what he had just said. The room fell silent, all eyes on us, and I could feel the weight of their stares. I should have felt devastated, should have run off the stage in tears, but instead, a smile crept onto my face. I had been waiting for this moment, the perfect opportunity to reveal the truth that had been buried for too long. "Since we're sharing DNA secrets," I said, my voice steady as I walked toward the podium, the microphone amplifying my words. I reached into my graduation folder and pulled out a white envelope, feeling the adrenaline surge through me. Ethan's wife, Michelle, turned pale, her eyes wide with fear. "Your son," I continued, locking eyes with Ethan, "that precious baby boy you've been showing off for the past 6 months isn't actually your son." The gasps grew louder, whispers spreading like wildfire. I could see phones being raised, recording every moment of this unexpected drama. "He's your brother Jason's child." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of betrayal. Ethan's confident demeanor crumbled, and he collapsed back into his seat, disbelief etched across his face. I could see Michelle's panic as she clutched the baby, her facade shattering. "I have the DNA test results right here," I declared, waving the papers triumphantly. The gym erupted into chaos, people standing on chairs to get a better view, their excitement palpable. In that moment, I felt powerful, liberated from the chains of my past. I had turned the humiliation into my own victory, reclaiming my narrative in front of everyone who had ever doubted me. As I walked off the stage, diploma in hand, I knew I had finally taken control of my story. Growing up, I always felt like an outsider in my own home. My adoptive mother, Caitlin, had been my anchor, showering me with love and warmth. I still remembered the way she would hum softly while folding laundry, her laughter filling the house with light. Caitlin made every moment magical, turning mundane tasks into adventures. She was everything a mother should be, nurturing and kind, always reminding me how wanted I was. "You were chosen, Zoe," she would say, her eyes sparkling with love. But Ethan, my adoptive father, was different. He was a successful businessman, always busy, always distracted. I often felt like I was living in a hotel rather than a home. Family dinners felt more like board meetings, where I was expected to report on my grades and achievements. He never called me his daughter, and I could sense the emotional distance growing between us. I longed for his approval, but it always felt just out of reach. When Caitlin fell ill, everything changed. I was only 14 when cancer took her from us. I remember sitting beside her hospital bed, holding her hand as she whispered her last words. "Remember, sweetheart, you were wanted." Those words echoed in my mind, a bittersweet reminder of the love I had lost. After her death, Ethan's grief transformed into something unrecognizable. He became colder, more distant, and I felt abandoned in my sorrow. 6 months later, he brought Michelle into our lives. She was nothing like Caitlin, sharp, polished, and seemingly perfect. I could tell she was more interested in appearances than in building a genuine connection with me. I felt like a relic from Ethan's past, a placeholder until he could start anew with her. Their marriage felt like a betrayal of Caitlin's memory, and I struggled to find my place in this new family dynamic. As I navigated the awkwardness of family gatherings, I began to notice the subtle signs of Michelle's deceit. The way she laughed too loudly, the way she avoided eye contact when Ethan was around, it all felt off. I started to pull away, spending more time at the library or with friends, trying to escape the suffocating atmosphere at home. Little did I know, the secrets I was about to uncover would change everything. This backstory sets the stage for my confrontation with Ethan, revealing the emotional turmoil that fueled my desire for truth and justice. It's a reminder that the journey to reclaim my identity was paved with pain, love, and the longing for acceptance. In the days following the ceremony, I couldn't shake the feeling that my battle was far from over. I spent hours replaying the events in my mind, the gasps of the audience echoing in my ears. I had revealed a truth, but I needed more than just words. I needed proof. It was then that I remembered the whispers I had overheard between Michelle and Jason, Ethan's younger brother. Their conversations had been laced with secrecy, and I felt a surge of determination to uncover the truth. One evening, while Ethan was out for a business meeting, I decided to dig deeper. I had been collecting clues for months, piecing together the puzzle of my family's deception. I recalled the late-night phone calls I had overheard, Michelle's hushed tones filled with urgency. "I told Jason not to send gifts here anymore," she had said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Ethan's getting suspicious." My heart raced as I realized the implications of her words. I needed concrete evidence, something that would expose the affair and validate my suspicions. I began to formulate a plan. I knew I had to act quickly, so I gathered a few strands of hair from Jason's last visit, discreetly collecting them while he played with Marcus in the living room. I also managed to snag a few strands of Ethan's hair from his brush, and I even found a pacifier that Marcus had dropped, knowing it would provide a DNA sample. The next day, I drove to a small, private lab across town, my heart pounding with anticipation. I paid in cash, explaining that it was for a school project, and handed over the samples. "You'll get a call in 2 to 3 weeks with the results," the technician said, her eyes barely meeting mine. I left the lab, clutching the receipt like a lifeline, knowing that this was my chance to finally confront Ethan with undeniable proof. As I drove home, I felt a mix of fear and excitement. The weight of my family's secrets pressed down on me, but I was determined to uncover the truth. I knew that once I had the results, everything would change. I was no longer just the adopted daughter seeking acceptance. I was a detective, ready to expose the lies that had kept me in the shadows for too long. The countdown had begun, and I could feel the tension building, leading me closer to the moment of reckoning. As I navigated my daily life, I became hyper-aware of my surroundings. I watched Michelle closely, noting her every move. She had a routine that seemed almost too perfect, and I began to suspect that it was a carefully crafted facade. Every Tuesday, she would announce her manicure appointment, leaving the house dressed impeccably, her hair perfectly styled. But I had started timing her trips, and something didn't add up. 20 minutes to drive downtown, an hour for a manicure, and 20 minutes back left 3 hours unaccounted for. One Tuesday, I decided to follow her. I called in sick to school, my heart racing with anticipation. I parked a few blocks away from our house, watching as she drove off in her sleek car. I felt like a spy, adrenaline coursing through my veins as I trailed her to the Marriott Hotel on 5th Street. My stomach twisted as I saw her walk through the lobby, exuding confidence and familiarity. I parked across the street, my hands gripping the steering wheel tightly, and waited. 20 minutes later, Jason's silver BMW pulled into the same lot. My heart sank as I watched them meet, their body language betraying a closeness that felt wrong. I felt a mix of anger and betrayal, but I knew I had to remain calm. I couldn't confront them yet. I needed more evidence. I drove home, my mind racing with the implications of what I had just witnessed. Over the next few weeks, I continued my investigation, gathering more pieces of the puzzle. I noticed Michelle's phone habits. She was always glued to it, texting and scrolling through social media. But whenever Ethan entered the room, she would flip it face down or shove it into her purse with alarming speed. Normal people don't hide innocent messages, I thought. One evening, she left her phone on the kitchen counter while she went upstairs to check on Marcus. I seized the opportunity, glancing at the screen, just long enough to see Jason's name at the top of her recent messages. The preview read, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Same place, same time." My heart raced as I processed the information. I had to be careful. I couldn't let her catch on. I spent hours at the library, pretending to study while I plotted my next move. I needed to gather enough evidence to confront Ethan without leaving room for denial. I started paying attention to the little things, Michelle's expensive jewelry, the gifts she received that Ethan could never afford. I recalled the bracelet she wore, one that I had seen Jason give to Caitlin years ago. It felt like a slap in the face, a reminder of the love that had been replaced by deceit. The most damning evidence came from Marcus himself. As he grew, it became increasingly clear that he didn't resemble Ethan at all. Where Ethan had blue eyes and straight brown hair, Marcus had dark, curly locks and deep brown eyes. I couldn't shake the feeling that he looked just like Jason. One afternoon, while Michelle was playing with him, I overheard her cooing, "Come on, little Jay, smile for Mommy." My heart dropped. She had almost called him by Jason's name. That night, I made my decision. I needed to get DNA samples from all three of them, Ethan, Jason, and Marcus. I had already collected hair samples from Jason during his last visit and snagged a pacifier from Marcus, but I needed to be more strategic. I waited for the perfect moment when Michelle was distracted. When Jason came over for dinner, I casually collected a few strands of hair from the bathroom he used. I felt like a thief in my own home, but I was determined to see this through. I also managed to grab a few strands of Ethan's hair from his brush in the master bedroom while Michelle was busy elsewhere. Finally, I had everything I needed. I returned to the lab, my heart pounding with anticipation. "You'll get a call in 2 to 3 weeks with the results," the technician had said. I left the lab, clutching the receipt tightly, knowing that this was my chance to confront Ethan with undeniable proof. As I drove home, I felt a mix of fear and excitement. The countdown had begun, and I could feel the tension building, leading me closer to the moment of reckoning. I was no longer just the adopted daughter seeking acceptance. I was a detective, ready to expose the lies that had kept me in the shadows for too long. The truth was within my grasp, and I was determined to reveal it, no matter the cost. On the morning of graduation, I woke up with a mix of excitement and dread. I dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that made me feel confident and strong. This was my moment, and I wanted to look the part. As I glanced in the mirror, I reminded myself of Caitlin's words, "You were wanted, you were chosen." I took a deep breath, channeling that love and strength as I headed to the ceremony. The gymnasium was filled with families, friends, and the buzz of celebration. I could see my classmates, their faces beaming with pride as they prepared to walk across the stage. But my heart was racing for a different reason. I spotted Ethan and Michelle in the 4th row, their expressions a mix of excitement and tension. I could sense that Ethan was still reeling from my earlier revelation, and I knew he was unprepared for what was about to unfold. As the ceremony began, I felt the familiar rush of adrenaline. The principal's voice echoed through the gym, but I barely heard his words. My focus was solely on the moment when my name would be called. When it finally happened, I stood up, smoothing my gown, and began to walk toward the stage. The applause was deafening, but I could feel Ethan's eyes on me, filled with a mix of anger and confusion. Just as I reached the podium, I felt a surge of determination. This was it. I had the microphone in my hand, and I was ready to take control of my narrative. But before I could speak, Ethan stood up, his voice cutting through the applause. "You're not my real daughter anyway." The words hit me like a physical blow, and the room fell silent. Gasps echoed through the crowd, and I could feel the weight of their stares. Instead of crumbling, I smiled. This was the opening I had been waiting for. "Since we're sharing DNA secrets," I said, my voice steady and clear, "I think it's only fair that everyone knows the whole truth." I reached into my graduation folder and pulled out the white envelope, feeling the adrenaline surge through me. I could see Michelle's face turn pale, her eyes wide with fear. "Your son," I continued, locking eyes with Ethan, "that precious baby boy you've been showing off for the past 6 months isn't actually your son." The gasps grew louder, whispers spreading like wildfire. I could see phones being raised, recording every moment of this unexpected drama. "He's your brother Jason's child." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of betrayal. Ethan's confident demeanor crumbled, and he collapsed back into his seat, disbelief etched across his face. I could see Michelle's panic as she clutched the baby, her facade shattering. "I have the DNA test results right here," I declared, waving the papers triumphantly. The gym erupted into chaos, people standing on chairs to get a better view, their excitement palpable. In that moment, I felt powerful, liberated from the chains of my past. I had turned the humiliation into my own victory, reclaiming my narrative in front of everyone who had ever doubted me. "You wanted to cut me off, Ethan," I said, my voice rising above the chaos. "You wanted to humiliate me in public. Well, congratulations. You just gave me the perfect opportunity to return the favor." The crowd was buzzing, and I could see my classmates frozen in shock, their own graduation forgotten in favor of this unexpected drama. I turned my gaze back to Ethan, who was staring at me as if he had never seen me before. "You thought you could push me out of your life quietly, but you've just given me the stage to expose the truth." As I walked off the stage, diploma in hand, I felt a rush of exhilaration. I had taken control of my story, and the truth was finally out. The gymnasium erupted into chaos behind me, but I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I had faced my fears, confronted my past, and emerged victorious. This moment marked a turning point in my life. I was no longer just Zoe, the adopted daughter seeking acceptance. I was Zoe Richardson, a young woman who had reclaimed her identity and was ready to embrace whatever came next. The applause faded into the background as I stepped into my new reality, ready to face the consequences of my actions and the future that awaited me. The moment I exited the gym, I was met with a flurry of emotions. My classmates, once my friends, now looked at me with a mix of admiration and confusion. Some were recording videos, their phones capturing every moment of my dramatic revelation. I could hear snippets of conversations around me, whispers of disbelief and excitement. Did she really just say that? What's going to happen next? I felt like a celebrity, but the weight of my actions began to settle in. As I made my way to the parking lot, I spotted Ethan standing outside the gym, his face pale and drawn. He looked like a man who had just lost everything. I could see the anger and confusion swirling in his eyes, but beneath it all, I sensed a flicker of fear. I had shattered his carefully constructed world, and now he was left to pick up the pieces. "Zoe!" he called out, his voice cracking with desperation. I paused, my heart racing. Part of me wanted to confront him, to demand answers for the years of emotional distance and neglect. But another part of me felt a strange sense of pity. This was a man who had lost not only his reputation, but also the illusion of control he had maintained for so long. "Please, we need to talk," he pleaded, taking a step toward me. I shook my head, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. "You wanted to cut me off, Ethan. You wanted to humiliate me in front of everyone. I won't let you manipulate me anymore." With that, I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, a broken man in the aftermath of his own making. As I drove home, the reality of what I had done began to sink in. I had exposed a family secret that would ripple through our lives, and I couldn't help but wonder about the consequences. Would Ethan fight back? Would Michelle disappear completely, taking Marcus with her? The uncertainty gnawed at me, but I knew I had done the right thing. I had taken control of my narrative, and for the first time, I felt empowered. The following days were a whirlwind. News of my graduation revelation spread like wildfire, and I found myself at the center of a media storm. Local news stations wanted interviews, and social media buzzed with commentary. I was both exhilarated and overwhelmed. I had become a symbol of defiance, a young woman who had stood up against the injustices of her family. But with that attention came scrutiny, and I felt the pressure mounting. Meanwhile, Ethan's world began to unravel. I heard whispers from classmates about his erratic behavior, missed meetings, and the way he paced his backyard at odd hours. He had filed for divorce from Michelle, and the fallout was swift. Neighbors reported seeing her load suitcases into her car, taking Marcus with her. I felt a pang of guilt, knowing that my actions had led to this chaos, but I also felt a sense of relief. The truth was finally out, and I was no longer trapped in a web of lies. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself reflecting on my relationship with Caitlin. I remembered her love, her unwavering support, and the way she had always encouraged me to be true to myself. I missed her more than ever, but I also felt her presence guiding me through this tumultuous time. I knew she would be proud of me for standing up for myself, for refusing to be silenced. One evening, as I sat in my room, I stumbled upon Caitlin's old journals. I opened one, and her words flooded back to me, reminding me of the strength I had inherited from her. "You are loved, Zoe. Never forget that," she had written. Those words resonated deeply, and I realized that I was not alone in this journey. I had the love of my mother, and I would carry that with me as I moved forward. The aftermath of my revelation was not just about the chaos it created, it was also about the clarity it brought. I was no longer just Zoe, the adopted daughter seeking acceptance. I was Zoe Richardson, a young woman who had reclaimed her identity and was ready to embrace the future. The road ahead would be challenging, but I was determined to navigate it on my own terms, guided by the love and strength that Caitlin had instilled in me. As the weeks passed, I focused on rebuilding my life. I moved into a small, sunny studio apartment near campus, a space that felt entirely mine. I arranged my books on floating shelves and hung photos of Caitlin and me on the walls, creating a sanctuary filled with memories of love and warmth. Each item I placed reminded me of the strength I had inherited from my mother, and I felt a sense of peace enveloping me. One evening, while unpacking, I discovered Caitlin's journals tucked away in a box. I opened one, and her familiar handwriting filled the pages, recounting our journey together. "You are my daughter in every way that matters," she had written. Those words resonated deeply, reinforcing my sense of belonging. I realized that I was not defined by my adoption or the chaos of my family. I was defined by the love I had received and the choices I made. Inspired by Caitlin's legacy, I decided to volunteer at a local support center for children in foster care. I wanted to give back, to help others navigate the complexities of family and identity. Each week, I sat with small groups of children, sharing my story and listening to theirs. I found joy in their laughter and resilience, and it reminded me of the importance of connection and community. One day, while working with a group of kids, a little girl named Emma looked up at me with wide eyes. "Do you hate your dad?" she asked, her voice filled with innocence. I paused, reflecting on my journey. "No," I replied softly. "I used to think I did, but I realized that sometimes adults do mean things when they're scared. It doesn't mean you have to let them hurt you." As I spoke, I felt a sense of purpose wash over me. I was no longer just Zoe, the adopted daughter seeking acceptance. I was a mentor, a guide, and a survivor. I had chosen to embrace love over fear, just as Caitlin had taught me. In that moment, I understood that my journey was not just about reclaiming my identity, it was about helping others find theirs. I was ready to face whatever came next, armed with the knowledge that I was loved, I was enough, and I was finally free. Have you ever faced a moment that changed your life forever, like discovering a family secret on your graduation day? In my latest story, I reveal how a shocking public confrontation with my father led to a whirlwind of chaos, betrayal, and ultimately, self-discovery. What happened next will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about family and identity. If you want to dive deeper into this emotional journey and hear more stories that explore the complexities of family dynamics, check out this one. You won't want to miss it.